Hello, Leominsterites. It is your state representative, Natalie Higgins, for our May episode. And you can see I'm still in my house. We are not back at the Leominster Access TV studio, so I'm doing this solo and coming to you via Zoom with my favorite congressman. We're really lucky to have Congressman Jim McGovern. And I'm really thrilled to have him for the next 30 minutes to talk about what's going on at the federal level, how we're working together to support Massachusetts residents. Really get an update from him and see what he has to share. And for those of you who aren't aware, Congressman Jim McGovern is the chair of the House Committee on Rules, a very, very important role to be playing, especially as we in the House just had our first remote formal session, which is pretty historic, something I never thought that we would ever see happen. The Massachusetts legislature has been around for almost 400 years, a little over 390. And this is the first time that we've ever held a formal session where the members were not on the floor for our vote. So I'm really proud and excited that we were able to get a plan together so that we could start passing bold legislation. Up until now, nothing has stopped. We've been passing legislation through informal sessions, but it's what everyone agrees on, right? And so that's not necessarily the big sweeping changes that we need to address something like COVID-19. So I'm really excited to talk to Congressman McGovern, hear what's going on at the federal level. Things are changing day by day, hour by hour, and just thankful for him taking some time to speak to us today. Well, Congressman.
Happy to be with you. I'm in my home in Worcester, and I have the laptop faced against the back here because my kids are home with me, my 18-year-old daughter and my 22-year-old son. If I turn this around, it's like a disaster area. So I'm working remotely as well, and but I'm probably going to be driving back to Washington. I've been driving back and forth to Washington. We were in session again a little bit over a week ago, and I'm going to be probably going back tomorrow or the next day as we get prepared for the next package that we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about what those discussions look like? What kind of relief for individuals, for states, for municipalities? What are those discussions like?
Well, first of all, let me say to you, thank you for your leadership during this crisis, and thank you for, doing these sessions to inform the public. And I know your office has been responding to concerns and communications from constituents in the greater Leominster area, and I appreciate the fact that we work together. And in fact, everybody at the local, state, we're working as a team, and that's people should be happy about that. That we're all kind of coordinating together, and that's a good thing. But look, this is a crisis that has impacted every aspect of our economy, and businesses have been shut down. Essentially, we have to practice social distancing, or I like to call it physical distancing. We want to keep the social stuff going as much as we can, even if it's through video conferencing or through telephone calls. And we're dealing with a healthcare crisis. And what I remind people all the time is we unless we solve this healthcare crisis, unless we deal with it effectively, we're not going to be able to deal with the economic crisis.
Absolutely.
We've seen some states that have just already opened up, but nobody's leaving their homes to go to malls. Nobody is going out and doing what they would normally do. That's because they don't feel confident that in those particular states that necessary precautions have been taken, or that their governor may be acting in the best health interest of the people. So we got to get the healthcare stuff right in order to get the economic stuff right. And so I think Governor Baker is correct in trying to rely on the best medical advice that is available, because if we come out of this too soon, it could backfire. We could see a new surge of cases and a new surge of deaths. And it is, my heart aches. I know your heart aches for all the people who have suffered through this virus, who have lost loved ones. It is painful. I have a friend who lost both parents within 10 days, and it's just tragic. And so I think we have to, we have to again make sure we get the healthcare part of this right. So one of the things I believe we need to do is, since the president doesn't want to coordinate a national strategy on testing. What I want to make sure is that if the states are going to have to do it, that the funding is there so the states can do it. So, we're going to provide additional funding for testing in this next package so that the governors can implement a more comprehensive testing strategy. Number one, more money for our hospitals and our community health centers. We want to provide more direct assistance to states and local governments, getting money directly into the hands of the governor, getting money directly to the hands of the mayor of Leominster and town managers, and not just in bigger cities, but smaller towns as well. All these new expenses have been added to local governments. We need to make sure that they can get through this. And so getting them money and resources with maximum amount of flexibility, because every community is different, every community's needs are different, I think will be important. I do a lot of work on hunger and food insecurity. We have a hunger crisis in this country.
Absolutely.
You're watching on TV and you see, on one hand, you see farms in the Midwest dumping milk or plowing over crops or, destroying, pigs or other, animals. And then you see, in the same news programs, people lined up for miles and miles and miles to try to get food. And the Secretary of Agriculture tells me, well, it's our distribution system, so we can't really do anything about it. And I'm like, that's not an acceptable answer. You know what? Adjust. And if you don't want to do it, then give the money to states or to food banks, and they'll rent the trucks and they'll get the food where it's plentiful and get it to those in need. I stopped in Leominster a couple of weeks ago with the Ginny's Food Pantry and saw the great work on there. And and they were telling me that they're seeing new faces, like an incredibly large amount of new faces they've never seen before. So we need to have a component that addresses that in this upcoming bill. We need to make sure there's money for our schools, and figuring out what additional help we can provide to our small businesses that are struggling here. So it's everything. But as you said, you're operating remotely because in the past we all can agree on things that we have total agreement on. Now it gets a little bit more difficult, and so we're going to have to figure out. We're going to have to go back in person, as we have been in the last two bills that we've passed. But we're also going to have to figure out how we can operate remotely. And it's not because I'm concerned about the health and well-being of members of Congress, although some of our members, are in, their health is not so great. But I'm worried about I'm worried about the impact on our staff, on the Capitol Police. The people who maintain the Capitol campus. One of the things about this disease is that, we could be carriers and be totally asymptomatic. So,
Absolutely.
Right? So we could be spreading it. So we have to be smart about this. But I'll just say one final thing. I hear people say, I want to get back to normal. Well, I take a little bit of exception to that, because what this pandemic has shown us, and we're seeing it in our communities, and especially we're talking about the issue of hunger and food insecurity, we're seeing made even clearer the great inequities and inequalities that exist in this country. Going back to normal means that we go back to a place where it was acceptable to have 40 million Americans not know where the next meal was going to come from. That's just wrong, right? So we need to do better than going back to normal. So as we deal with the crisis, we need to be thinking long-term about what we can put in place to help actually solve some of these problems that really didn't get the attention that they deserved in the past.
Sure. And I know that we were joined by Eladia Romero, your district director. So I just wanted to give her a shout out for all of the work that she's been doing. And for folks who don't know how to get a hold of the congressman, he has an office right in Leominster down the hall from me. And right now you can reach them over the phone by calling them at 978-466-3552. And Eladia has been an amazing partner in connecting constituents who are having issues with federal federal programs, especially we've been hearing from so many folks around the economic impact payments. Where are their checks? How long is it taking? How are they getting to them? And just also issues about how do taxes work now that we've delayed the tax filings. So no question is too small. We're dealing with a lot of uncertainty right now, and we want to make sure that we're getting you the answers. We might not have it right away, but we usually can track it down. And so please continue to reach out to our offices.
I think that's an important point, Natalie. I mean, the bottom line is, I mean, our staff may be working remotely. We may be, working in our homes or in our, or alone in our offices when we could get there. But we're here to, answer questions and to direct people to get assistance. And, there's no question too small or no question too big. Just call us. And if they call you, you can't answer, you can call us or whatever.
Yeah.
Aladi has been great fielding all these questions. My webpage, mcgovern.house.gov, we provide updates on the latest legislative initiatives that have moved forward, so people can follow us on that. And I have a newsletter as well that goes out to people. So, we're trying to get you information, but I know it can be overwhelming because so much is descending on us all at once. Don't feel overwhelmed. Pick up the phone, give us a call, and let's see whether we could be of any assistance.
Yeah, and I so appreciate you starting talking about, the shift from talking about social distancing to physical distancing, right? We need to keep these social connections, especially the longer and longer that we're staying in our homes. And we're trying to find new ways to get creative of connecting folks, because it can be lonely, especially if you're at home by yourself for extended periods of time. And it can be overwhelming if you're at home with your kids trying to navigate how to help them get through their school day.
Right.
So we know that our families are dealing with just so many different things on their plates. And a population that you work so much in supporting in terms of hunger and homelessness, right? Not every single one of our community members has a home to stay in. And so that's something that we've been working with your office in North Central Mass to really talk about, making sure that we have adequate resources. Our Father's House is a really important resource up in North Central Mass, but they can't support all of the homeless community members across North Central Mass. We really need to make sure that we have enough solutions for folks. And I dream of a day where shelter is not the norm, right? That we're finding ways to get people into permanent supportive housing as quickly as possible. That shelter should be a temporary solution, not a long-term solution.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's why, again, an important part of this next package has to be aid to state and local governments. I mean, Mayor Marzarella, knows what is, where there are shortfalls in Leominster. Where there are shortfalls in Leominster. The governor has a better appreciation of, where the needs are in the state. So, so rather than Washington pass a program where one glove fits all, where we think we're identifying, a problem that may be a problem in some states, but not ours, it's better to provide the money directly to cities, towns, and states, and say, you have flexibility, to deal with the issue of housing. You have the flexibility to do more to help small businesses. Some of the community development block grants, I'm calling you from Worcester, that came to Worcester, were used to help deal with the homeless population. Also, to help some small businesses that, quite frankly, don't have long-term relationships with lenders and didn't quite know how to get into, establishing those relationships. And so, many of them in, minority-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses. I mean, so that helped a little bit. And the package we just passed, we, so that it's not just the big businesses that are getting it, we targeted more money toward mission lenders, again, to help those smaller businesses, those mom and pop shops, if you will, in our communities to get the resources they need to get by. But there's, there's everything is impacted. I just got off the phone with the head of the Airline Pilots Association, and, they're concerned that airlines are not following CDC guidelines in terms of cleansing the cockpits. And so they're worried about the health and safety of those who are operating airplanes. I've talked to I was talking to somebody who's at the National Institutes of Health, who was warning me that, in addition to planning for the immediate term, you need to be thinking long term, that if we can come up with a vaccine at some point, do we have the capacity to produce it at the level that everybody can get it?
Absolutely.
And by the way, we need more needles too to be able to do that. We should have learned. We have to learn our lessons, right? With PPE. We had hospitals, healthcare providers, first responders who had to fight like they were in the Hunger Games for PPE, hunting down leads to try to get it. That's just crazy. The bottom line is the federal government. Look, as we look back, the president should have listened seriously to his advisors in January and in February and early March that this was coming. Instead, he withheld that information. He denied it, and that delay and denial has been deadly. But what he should have done is done an inventory across the country to say, are you prepared for this? Do you have enough PPE? And if you don't, we will invoke the Defense Production Act and we will make it so you don't have to worry about that. You didn't do that. We now have to, as we're getting through this now, we have to understand that things may get a little bit better in the summer. But the head of the CDC, other healthcare experts are saying this could come back again in the fall. Are we prepared for that? We need to learn the lessons of what went right and what went wrong, and let's not repeat what went wrong. I authored a bill that passed a couple of weeks ago to create a select committee. It's modeled after the select committee that then Senator Harry Truman headed to look into whether the monies being appropriated for World War II were getting to where they needed to go. Was all the money going to help the war effort, or were people skimming money off the top, or was it going to things that weren't helping win the war? We need oversight right now. We need to make sure that these small business loans are helping small businesses, not luxury steakhouse chains, or not the LA Lakers or whatever. They have to go to where they're most needed. These big, gigantic mega corporations, they have the wherewithal to withstand this, right? And they have the connections in the financial services industry to be able to get through this. But the smaller businesses don't. We need to make sure that they're taken care of. And I know that's where your heart and soul is as well. These businesses we see in Leominster, that are, even under the best of times, we're doing okay, but not spectacularly, right? We want to keep them viable so that they can reopen, and we can, help them, continue to thrive once it's safe to kind of get back into the swing of things here.
And I'm truly hoping that everything that we're experiencing is really showing a light on the inequities that are in our communities, right? Like when we look at the disparities of whose communities are overwhelmingly impacted by severe health outcomes, death, related to COVID-19, who has access to affordable and accessible healthcare. I'm meeting many constituents who never knew that they had a self-funded health plan, right? Like that's not something that they come across until they get the bill for their prescriptions related to their COVID-19 treatment. And they find out that they're not actually protected by any of the state laws because of ERISA laws. And so that they're having to navigate this while they're dealing with lost wages, while they're dealing with so many other headaches that are just making their lives that much more unmanageable.
And we want some of these industries, like the insurance industry, to help us during this time, right? Insurance costs overall, what insurance companies are paying out is less. We're not doing elective surgery. A lot of things that normally were, they would be covering, they're not, right? Because hospitals are limiting what kinds of procedures are going on. It'd be nice to be able to say the insurance industries are great, that they're helping us out, that they're responding by maybe lowering some of the costs that we have to pay on a monthly basis. The auto industry, the auto insurance industry in some cases has lowered the cost of auto insurance for some. We're in a crisis where we all have to step up. So government, and you're working on the state level. I'm working at the federal level. I mean, the mayor and the city council is working, and the school committee is working at the local level. We're all going to do what we got to do, but the government, in and of itself, can't be the only entity that is responding to this. And I've seen a lot of incredible generosity during this crisis, and there are a lot of companies that have stepped up, a lot of individuals that have stepped up. People are still volunteering. It's all really wonderful. But we have to behave as a community, and we need to put the old ideological whatever debates to the side for now. I was reading the New York Times this morning, and it says that the White House is pushing back against attempts to enhance SNAP benefits for people who rely on SNAP. I just because they don't want to have the narrative that more people are on the benefit, and I'm like, oh my God! I mean, the way SNAP is supposed to work is that during times of economic crisis, people are able to get it. When things get better, and as things we're getting better, people get off of it. But food is something you can't live without. So to suggest, to have this old ideological polarizing debate over, should SNAP exist and should we help people, who are hungry? Give me a break. We cannot have this. We cannot have this. People need to eat. It's, I'm worried, and I know you have too, that even before this, the challenges that people in low income brackets face oftentimes are an afterthought. I'm really worried in this middle of this pandemic that they become invisible. They can't. There are neighbors. And again, these are people who work. They work oftentimes in low-wage jobs. They're essential, important jobs. We all benefit from them. We can't leave anybody behind. We all have to be in this together. So we want to help, big businesses survive. We want to have small businesses survive, but we also have to make sure that those who have been struggling, even in the best of times, that they get through this. And by the way, because of a lot of people being laid off now, more and more people fall into that category. We have to be there for them.
No, absolutely. Congressman, we have just a few minutes left. I'm wondering if there's anything, you touched on this a little bit, but anything that you've seen that gives you hope about where we're going to be after this.
I have seen, and Natalie, I know you have seen too, just incredible generosity. I mentioned I was at Ginny's food pantry in Leominster. People volunteering there, getting food to people who need it. The nurses and the doctors that I have talked with who are working in our hospitals, they all have families too. They're showing up to work every day to try to save the lives of members of this community. The people who are handing out lunches and food to our students who are no longer in school. There's just incredible goodness and generosity in our community and in our country, and we need to highlight that, and we need to build on that. And we just, look, we are in a crisis like we have never been in before. We have to think big. We have to think boldly. And we're going to have to think not of just getting through this crisis, but what happens next. And we're going to have to make some dramatic changes to some of the systems that, quite frankly, have failed our population and our country. And look, we'll do this. We'll get through this. I know we will get through this. But the final thing I'm going to say is listen to the best medical advice. That is the way we got to get this healthcare crisis solved. Once we solve the healthcare crisis, we can deal with the economic crisis. But we have to listen to the best medical advice. As frustrating as it is, they're going to help us get through this.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. And as we wrap up, for those of you who don't know how to reach out to my office, you can call us at 978-227-5278. We are returning calls. Thank you to everyone who's reaching out. Really, no issue is too small. Please reach out if you're having trouble. We're happy to connect you with a resource. And especially we've been hearing from so many folks who are struggling with unemployment. If you have called the unemployment office, requested a call back, have not gotten a call back, please let us know so we can get you a call back. They're working really hard. They have staffed up tremendously, from a staff of 50 to a staff of over 1,000 to get through these unemployment claims. But none of you should be waiting this many weeks to get that income. You deserve it, and we need to connect you with it so that you can take one more worry off your plate. So please reach out. Thank you for tuning in. Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Well, thank you for your great work, and you be safe, and everybody who's watching this, be safe.
Take care, everyone, and we will see you in June.